Good morning. I'm Ben Peckman, Slate Ridge Dairy Farm in St. Thomas, Pennsylvania. I'm a dairy farmer. We have about 130 cows, and we also raise some steers and crop about 1,000 acres of cropland. Our family owns, I'm not sure, between 600 and 700 acres in that neighborhood somewhere, 650, and then we rent another 400 on top of that. Our base here, what I call the home farms around the dairy, is probably 500 acres and then 600 acres, I'd say, and then another 400 5 or 6 miles away from here. We grow lots of different crops. The main goal of our cropping program, first goal would be to feed our animals. So corn silage, alfalfa haylage would be the staples for that. And then lots of small grains, wheat and barley. Some corn for grain, some soybeans, some milo for grain, and then a whole slew of cover crops to fill in the gaps. We've been no-tilling pretty near forever, as long as I can remember, good 30, maybe 40 years, a lot of these fields. So I don't have a specific date of when I started no-till. But what I do have is in the last probably 5 or 6 years, we've really pushed our cover crop program. Before, no-till to us just meant not tilling between our cash crops. But like I said, recently here, in the last several years, we've really focused on getting cover crops growing on as many acres as possible. So that's, now to me, no-till is a lot more than just not tilling before I plant a crop. Yeah, we grow several different species of cover crops, and mainly what the determining factor of what species goes where would a lot of times be the time of year and the time that ground is open. So after I plant a lot of small grains, like I said earlier, and after that gives you a long window from June or July until fall to get something growing. So in a situation like that, we can try a lot of summer annuals, some what I call more exotic things like sun hemp, Sudan grass, sunflowers, tillage radish, a lot of things that we don't have time to grow in the fall. But then after corn silage, most of my corn silage acres goes to a small grain, so that's in effect a cover crop, even though I'll be harvesting it the next summer. But if I don't plant a small grain, then that's a good place to put crimson clover or hairy vetch. They're legumes that produce nitrogen. Annual ryegrass would be one that goes there. And I'm listing all these species, but I try not to plant single species of anything, or I should say I limit that. I like to plant mixes of things, 2, 3, 4, 5, up to 8 or so species in one field. Now, the field behind me here was planted after corn for combine corn for grain, and so that made it later in the fall yet, and so I was pretty well limited there to just rye. And so I find myself doing mixes clear up until maybe the end of September, and then after that, generally, the mixes won't work, the legumes won't grow, and so you're better off just getting a rye, triticale, or something like that on the field, so it's covered. Well, after I got on the cover crop bandwagon, and my cover crops kept getting thicker and taller and everything, I realized at some point I'm going to have an issue planting into them. And I was at a field day and met a gentleman who had invented a crop roller that was on his corn planter. And I saw it running during a field day, and I thought, boy, I got to have one of them. It works. And so 3 years ago, I talked to that guy, and he built me a prototype. He had never put one on a 12-row planter or a international planter, for that matter. And he was excited to do it, and I was excited to be his guinea pig, and it's worked really well. And what that's allowed us to do, this rye behind me here is every bit as tall as I am. It's 6 foot tall in places, and that's scary. With my rollers, it makes it doable, real doable. And I like to tell people, before I was worried about my cover crops managing me. What if they get too big? I got to spray them early. I got to do this. I got to take care of them. Now I can manage them. They can get as big as they want, and I can deal with it. Works good. Okay, well, there'll be different goals for rolling, and I'm not organic, and so I can spray my fields to kill the cover crop. And so I'm not really trying to kill the cover crop by rolling it. Some people roll specifically to kill their cover crop. The reason I want it rolled, I want that big mass there until I plant. But now that I'm planting today, that cover crop has served its purpose, and I want it to now decompose and give me the nutrients back that it's stored up and that it's scavenged. And so I want the crop that I'm planting to be able to get air and sunlight, and so that's why I'm rolling it down. And then it also makes a nice mat of mulch there to hopefully keep the soil cooler and wetter, and possibly even give me some weed suppression for later on here in the year. I guess our expectations with this program would be to increase our soil health in a larger way than just no-tilling or just letting your cover crop get little before you kill it. And so, yeah, I have high expectations of it increasing organic matter, increasing water hold capacity. It's obviously decreased runoff from the fields. I can pretty near guarantee that any nutrient that I applied in the form of manure over the past year hasn't left this field. It's there. And neither has any topsoil left this field. It's there as well. And so that's a huge benefit. I think definitely our soil health is improving, and that's something hard to measure. One of the easiest ways to measure it would be organic matter, how much organic matter is in the field. And we've had fairly high organic matters because we've not tilled for a long time, but I think we are seeing them increase. I actually have some 5.5 and 6, up to 6.5% organic matters. Some of these farms that we've done this for a long time, so that's huge. So one thing that my cover crop program does not do for me is make it rain, and that's what we're always limited on here. And that's one of the reasons we're doing this, conserve moisture and to do that. But I think the cover crops do help retain moisture. I would love to have a wet July sometime to prove that, because when there's no moisture in the ground, because it hasn't rained for 6 weeks, it's dry, no two ways about it. But yeah, definitely, there's definitely not as much evaporation going on when you have a mat like this laying there. I would recommend this approach to other producers. I would not recommend jumping in with both feet as far as I have all at one time. I would take baby steps to get there. I think it's a sustainable way of farming, or I've heard it's a regenerative way of farming. We got to protect this resource that we have in our soil. We let it wash to the bay. It doesn't do anybody any good there, and that's a hot topic in this state and in this part of the world. But it's serious too, and it doesn't help me at all to have my topsoil or my fertilizer down there. And so yeah, anything I can do to keep it here and encourage my neighbors to do to keep theirs on their farm too, it's a benefit to everybody.